For many decades, Africans had limited access to traditional financial services such as loans, insurance, and credit facilities. However, the continent has recently begun to witness unprecedented growth in its financial technology sector, aka fintech. As internet and mobile usage continues to grow, financial services in several major African emerging markets such as Nigeria, Kenya, and Egypt are bypassing traditional banking processes in favor of efficient tech-enabled solutions such as mobile money. Now, joining me to see how African fintechs are navigating the market realities of right now is Henry Obieke. He's the Managing Director of Fair Money Nigeria. Henry, welcome to Business Edge. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me and good morning.
So we hear a lot about fintechs. Almost for every conversation you have about the African startup space, it's usually a reference to the African fintech. And depending on who you talk to, the amount of the investment coming in can vary. So let's start with that. Just how successful have African fintechs been in raising investments? And why are they the darling of investors when it comes to the startup space?
Thank you very much. All right. So if we take a look at it, in my view, I think that African fintechs have done a great job in attracting funding from international investors. And to sort of like buttress this point, you just need to step back a few years. So 5-6 years ago, in 2016, a total of $400 million in VC funding came into Africa. Fast forward to Q1 2022, what we've seen is in excess of $1.6 billion have come into Africa. And that's 4 times growth within a 5-year period. Yes, I know that market realities have changed a bit since Q1 2022, but overall, we still see that interest from international investors. We see increased number of deals, over 100 deals done on a quarterly basis. And to buttress some of that interest that we also see, today I was looking at the dailies, and one of the news I saw was that the United Nations Development Program, the UNDP, just launched, in conjunction with another party, launched a $1 billion fund targeted at African startups. I know that the BII, used to be CDC, has something similar. So we will continue to see that interest in Africa. And why are they interested in us? Obviously, it's the population. It's the fact that we have a young population. It's the fact that they see an opportunity to scale.
Yes.
It's the fact that they see the gap across different areas of verticals, like you described: credit, insurance, micro pensions, and agri-tech and stuff. And so when they see all this, they see that there's an opportunity, and Africans are building those solutions that eventually will solve that problem for themselves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so you mentioned this gap. So let's talk about that. With companies like Fair Money that work in the credit space, you're looking to fill gaps created in the financial services sector. It's the financial inclusion gap. It's the credit gap. Why do you think such critical issues are needed to be solved? And because when you have people like you in that space, it means people don't go to the brick and mortar banks anymore, which might demand an arm and a leg, your land, and possibly your firstborn, which many people don't have to give. So why is it critical we're solving this issue with companies like Fair Money in the sector?
Great. Thank you. Just a very quick correction. So Fair Money is not just in the credit business, we're in the banking business. And so the goal for us is provide the full gamut of services to our customers. Right? But to the point that you're trying to make, so what we've seen, financial inclusion numbers in Africa is generally low. If you deep dive into Nigeria, it's even worse compared to other peers in Nigeria, across Africa. That's one. You look at the credit to private sector, for example, credit to private sector in Nigeria is somewhere around 12%. The sub-Saharan African average is 3 times that. The South African number is multiple times that. So when you look at that, we see a significant gap. And what does that mean? Right? We need players like ourselves and other disruptors within the space to come in and sort of like change the way we provide services to our customers. And you're right in the sense that, so for example, at Fair Money, one of the things that we've seen is when we started this business, and even up till now, some of the loans that we are giving out to people with no history, right? And in most cases, this is the first time they're accessing credit from a formal institution, right? So there's a huge role for people like us to play, because no economy has grown without credit.
Yes.
It's something that is required without banking services. And so we need players like Fair Money and other fintechs to take the bull by the horn and change the way we do business. And then you also see some traditional banks also just trying to take that model and try to replicate
for themselves.
Replicate them.
Okay, so Henry, I have to ask, we talk about this being also a conversation on current market realities. So year after year for I think the past 3 or 4 years, or maybe even 5 years, the amount of investment coming into the African startup space has just continued to grow, whether it doubles or it just grows astronomically. But then COVID-19 struck, and we saw how that affected the industry. And now, just about a year and a half after that, we're in the Russia-Ukraine situation where inflation is running away with the world. There are fears of a global recession or at least economic slowdown. What's been the effect of this on the African fintech space?
Good. So I think to answer that question, I think there are 2 layers. So first, when COVID hit, we generally had to change the way we change our behavior. So the way we live life, the way we work, the way we go to school, the way we do transactions, and step in fintech players and startups to try to bridge that gap and create solutions that help us within the COVID period. And so what you see was that a lot of fintechs or tech-enabled businesses grew significantly. Case in point is Zoom, right? But steps further down the line with the Ukraine situation, what we are seeing is first, valuations have really tanked globally, right? And that's sort of like seeped into the Nigeria market. And because the valuations have tanked, you now see the typical investment funds or funds that or VC companies that will come into Africa, they don't have much capital as they used to have, right? So what you see is a situation where they begin to cherry pick the opportunities that they invest in, right? So they look at the healthier companies and they look at the more established companies, companies with some strong track. And then that's the implication of that is not everybody has access to the funds that, to the slush funds that we saw in the last couple of years.
Yes.
Right? So overall, fintech startups need to change the way they think. And for now, cash is king. So it's important to manage whatever cash that you have. Number 2, one of the things that we see is, okay, even within this time, a few players are still raising funds because they built that track and they have the numbers to still attract funding, right? So if you're able to raise funding in this time, then that's good. You need to still have a lean mindset. It's not business as usual.
Yes.
It's not business as usual. The fintech just more or less need to adjust with it. So what you see a lot of people doing is a lot of people that can manage their costs now.
Yeah.
A lot of people that that are cash rich will be looking for opportunities for acquisitions and mergers, and you see some of that
in the near future
over the next 12 months.
Okay.
And I also think that the ones that cannot survive may eventually die a natural death. So interesting times for fintech players now.
All right, Henry, at the risk of annoying my producer, I have to ask this question, and I need a very quick answer. Some have described the market in Africa as the market of the future. Do you agree? Do you think this is the fintech market of the future, or are we the fintech market of today with expectation of about $4 billion coming into the sector in 2022? 2 sentences, very quick answer.
My answer, we are the fintech, we are the market of today and tomorrow. Number two, it is clear that we have to build the solution for Africa.
Yes.
We're not going to wait for any companies, any international companies to come and build that solution. We build those solutions. We can learn from developed markets and developing markets, but we are building those solutions, and we've shown a track record that we know the market, and we are able to develop design solutions that work for this market. And then what that helps us do is attract funding from this international market and attract some knowledge where there are some knowledge gaps as well. Attract knowledge from these markets, because, for instance, for us, has no passport. But that is where you take.
No problem. I know there's a lot more in this sector we need to talk about, but that will have to be another time because of my time. But Henry, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
And many people are putting a lot of pressure on the African fintech space to help the continent develop, to provide creative solutions, and of course also work around some of the traditional issues. But $4 billion, that's the number that the African startup space could bring in by the end of 2022. It really is anybody's game, and a lot of people want to play. You're watching Business Edge. NC4 to watch is up next as we wrap things up. And getting into NC4 to watch right now, Ghana's vice president has assured Ghanaians, especially the business community, that the difficulties, delays, and frustrations associated with the acquisition of a tax clearance certificate and filing of tax returns will soon be a thing of the past. That's because the Ghana Revenue Authority is creating online platforms to automate the processes. Nigeria's Transportation Minister Muazu Sambo says the country is considering hiring private security operators to protect railway lines, including essential routes from the capital Abuja that has been attacked by criminal gangs and terrorists at least twice this year. The price of maize in Kenya is expected to rise in the coming days with the end of the subsidy as all millers resume operation in the wake of a limited supply of the produce. Only 129 millers out of 300 have been listed under the subsidy, with more than half of the processors halting their milling activities after government announced that most flour brands were to be sold at about 100 Kenyan shillings during the subsidy period. And finally, at least 7 African countries are at various stages in the rollout of nuclear power plants, as a majority eye 2030 as a start date for generating electricity from nuclear energy. And Egypt is currently the only country to have begun construction of the $25 billion project developed by the Russian state energy corporation Rosatom, which will help with the installed capacity of 4.8 gigawatts. And that's the business we have for you today. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also download our mobile app, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and watch us on the platforms we are available on. And we look forward to having your feedback, the stories, business stories, the conversations you want us to have. Just shout it out at us and we'll get into it. I'm Tolulokwe Adeleru Balogun. Have a fantastic day. 12 p.m. West African time is News Central now. Stick around.